Morning, and thanks to Ross for joining me today on our KJA Meet the Artist. Um, Ross, you're such a talented all-round artist. I've been in admiration of your work for years, so I think it'd be great for our KJA and white light communities to find out a little bit more about you and the depth and diversity of your abilities. So I've got a few questions for you. And so how long have you been illustrating and visualizing?
Professionally, I think I'm in my 26th year this year. So
Wow,
yeah, quite a long time. Yeah.
you
I'm
can't
one of
possibly be that old.
the yeah, oh yeah, I am definitely. Yeah, 26 years. Excluding sort of, college and art school and stuff like that.
Right.
So see, yeah, seen a lot of changes over the years for sure.
Yeah. And background, did you come from a sort of creative background in terms of the family?
Not massively. Although my gran was a really talented watercolor painter. She was really
Okay.
good. But she didn't do it professionally. She just did sort of stuff for friends. So she would paint sort of flowers and still life and stuff like that just for friends, really. But I suspect if she'd, if this wasn't 90 years ago, her talents might have been spotted and she might have been channeled into art school if it was now. But then, it just wasn't the case.
No,
But
no.
she practiced, as a hobbyist for all her life, really. Yeah.
No.
But
And
with regards to my parents, no, not really.
okay.
Maybe it skipped a generation. Although my mum can draw.
Okay. Well, it's obviously something's been passed down through the DNA.
Yeah, maybe.
Uh,
Yeah.
and can you remember how long you've been with KJA?
Um, I kind of think that it was before my kids started schools, and now the eldest one's just finishing. So I'm guessing about 12 years. Is it
Yeah,
10 or 12 years? 10 to
yeah.
12 years, I
I
guess.
think I think I looked it up. It was 2011 we started working together.
Was it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
12 years. Yeah.
it's
Wow.
quite a long time. Quite a long
Yeah.
time. Um, so what style would you say you specialize in, and what software do you use to create that sort of feel, and is there a particular reason why you use any particular software?
Style wise, it's kind of changed over the years quite a bit. Style wise, it's mostly sort of pre-visualization stuff, so concept work for TV ads, storyboard, and that sort of thing. All sort of pre-viz work, and then towards the sort of last 10 years, I've been doing a lot more sort of artwork, publishing stuff as well. So it tends to be the deadlines for the concept work are really, really tight. Um, it tends to be just whatever software you can use to get the job done the quickest, and every job's very different. It's very different needs in terms
Yeah,
of
no, absolutely.
So yeah, just do just whichever software gets the job.
Okay.
Helps you get the
What are your
job.
go-tos then in terms of software? What?
For Photoshop and Illustrator, and even for sort of drawing and stuff like that, everything's just kind of drawn on the tablets. And for 3D stuff, it's Lightwave 3D with its own native render or Octane render,
Right.
or DAZ 3D or Sculptress would be they're the regulars.
Okay. So you mix and match basically.
Yeah, mix and match, and on most jobs actually, it might begin in Photoshop, go into 3D, um, export out of 3D back into Photoshop,
Yeah.
and for retouching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think your style's changed over the years, and has that been, if that's the case, because of the changing software?
Yes, I think so. I mean, initially when I started, it was just before everything sort of digitized. So we would sort of be sitting up in the studio with airbrushes and I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember.
I remember it well. I've got the bogies to prove it.
Yeah, yeah, and the grotty fingernails full of paint, and there was a very sort of distinct smell in the studio of paint and
Yeah.
white spirits.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I started in 1997, so it was probably just about a few years before everything sort of
Went
jumped
digital.
over
Yeah.
onto Photoshop really into. God, that was just such a godsend. I mean, I can be quite nostalgic about it, but really Photoshop was just such a godsend. It was difficult at times working with airbrushes. You know, if things got amended, it was tricky and messy.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So
there's
yeah,
no layers of undo.
yeah, so many layers of undo, which was just like bliss. You could sort of experiment and do whatever you want, really. So in terms of style, yeah, initially from drawing on pads of paper with paints and magic markers and stuff like that, going on to Photoshop was the biggest change. And then over the years, it's probably just been tiny little tweaks, things that I've seen which have influenced my work, bits of work that I like, and that I've, you know, picked up little things. Sometimes you see something as an illustrator, you think, oh, that's quite nice, and it's, you know, subconsciously or unsubconsciously works its way into you.
Yeah, you try and absorb that.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to ask you actually is sort of who and what's been your biggest influences. It sort of runs quite naturally on from what we were just saying.
Artist wise, I would say probably I don't know if you're familiar with Ralph McQuarrie. He did all the concept painting work for the the original Star Wars trilogy. I love his stuff. It's so good. Andrew Loomis, Gil Elvgren, painters from the 1950s, Haddon Sundblom, who created the all that sort of stuff. Is really good stuff. Probably the biggest influence of my career was probably my mentor at the studio at the time, when I worked down in central London, a guy called Rich, who kind of took me under his wing, really, and showed me the ropes and really just kind of kept an eye on me, because I went to work in a studio where a lot of the artists had about 20 or 30 years experience under the belt, and I think I was the youngest there by about 15 years. So it was very intimidating, and I came out of college thinking I knew what I was doing, and then I was in this place with the work was. I felt as though I had to pretty much start again.
Well, I think that's what happens when you leave college, isn't it? You think you know how to do stuff, and then you get put into the reality of the world where you have a day to do something that you would ordinarily do 2 weeks worth at college.
Absolutely, like a 2 or 3 week brief at college is like a 2-day brief in a studio. That's the reality, and you haven't got time to mess around. You've got to get it right first time. So yeah, if it hadn't been for Rich, I think I probably wouldn't have had a career, to be honest. He really got me through the first few months until I got my speed and technique up to par.
No, I think everybody needs somebody like your tutor, or your mentor in the studio. I had a guy called Doug Harker when I was at college, and he was just fantastic. It really inspired me, and that made a huge difference to my focus and what I wanted to do.
Everyone needs a Doug.
Are you a traditional artist in being a night owl, or do you just try and keep regular hours?
When I'm busy, it's both. I come back from the school run. I start generally about 8:30, and often it can just be catching up on a few emails for the first half an hour, 40 minutes. And I'm generally slower in the morning. I kind of take a little bit of time to kind of get up to speed. And but I'm definitely more productive in the later hours in the evening, especially. I think it's just a more sort of settled time to work, so the email doesn't go and the phone doesn't go, and you just get into with the illustration. I think you just get into a flow, and the marks that you're making on the page just seem to come quite naturally. Whereas if you stop from that and go and do something else, even if you just go and make a cup of tea and you come back, it can quite often just sort of break that level of concentration. It takes a little bit of while to get back into it. So yes, definitely more productive in the evening, for sure.
I'm talking with Guy on the Meet the Artist last week, and we're talking about that. The sort of the first marks of the day are always the most difficult, and sometimes you throw them away, but sometimes once you've made those marks, you can get into it. So it's
I think it's quite
a similar thing for you then.
It's quite an instinctive thing, making the marks on the page. I think sometimes you just go into a weird sort of state of mind where it just comes naturally. You just find a sort of, you find your groove. I always used to struggle. The first ones were always the hardest, and then once you got those down, then it was plain sailing. But it just mentally, is this the time somebody's going to find out I can't do this anymore? Yeah, well, I think I always have that fear. I mean, I'm 20, like I say, I'm 26 years in now, and I still have that. You still have that sort of fear. But I think having that fear is a good thing. It's kind of keeps
Yeah,
you.
I think it's fairly universal across all
Yeah,
artists
I
and
think so.
creative, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
what would you say your top three pieces are, and who did you create them? I know it's a wide topic, and it's
Well,
difficult.
yeah, it's a good question. I would say probably my first one I would say would be a job which I did within the first couple of weeks of working as a professional. And I was walking. It was for Alka-Seltzer, and it was for a skin for a London bus. So they covered
Okay,
the whole bus in this thing. And a lot of the jobs that you do at kind of concept stage, you never get to see. They sometimes get binned off, or some make it through to print and production. So you never really, when something comes on TV and you see it, you think, oh, that made it through, kind of thing. But the bus one was really special because it was the first project that I saw that I'd actually worked on. And I was walking down Oxford Street, and the bus went past, and it was bright blue. You couldn't miss it. And there was all these Alka-Seltzer tablets fizzing down the side. And it was amazing to see, because
yeah.
I didn't have it was kind of pre-mobile phones with cameras. So I
Okay.
just watched this thing go past. I couldn't even get a photograph of it. But yeah, I would say that would be number one. There's something quite special about your first job that you get published, I think.
Yeah,
I
an
think
immense
that's,
pride, I guess.
yeah, an amazing sense of pride, that and a feeling that you've made it to what you wanted to do all your life,
Yeah.
for your work. The second would probably be some concept work I did for Suzuki a few years ago, which was all kind of character related stuff.
Okay.
And we only had about 2 or 3 days to do it, which is quite common for concept work. It's very sort of fast and furious. But I just poured my sort of heart and soul into that job, and they got much more than what they budgeted for, because
They always
just
do.
because I really enjoyed it. It was right up my street. It was character related stuff, and it all just kind of worked out really well. The clients were great, and yeah, that was a nice project, and that was some character concepts which were running alongside the launch of a new vehicle that they were creating. And I don't know whether that actually ever made it into print, to be honest, but it was a nice one to work on. And finally, the last one will probably be some work I did for Big Yellow Storage Lockers. It was
Okay.
probably from about the same time. I think it's probably about 5 or 6 years old. And they were like people and big animals squashed in, like almost like kind of like contortionism. They were squashed into little shapes.
Okay.
So that they had like these storage lockers, and you could squeeze anything into them. They had storage lockers for every different size, and that was just such a fun brief.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there were big things like elephants and rhinos and giraffes, all kind of squashed and
Bent over.
yeah, yeah. And we got to do 10.
All right.
We've got to do 10 concepts, which were all finished to quite a high standard. And then they picked 2 to go through the artwork at full resolution for 48 sheet posters, and they got printed posted and printed up and put up on the big 48 sheets. So that was nice to see. And that was I don't necessarily think it's my best work, but it was just a nice fun brief to work on, and
Sure.
it all worked. The job ran very smoothly and very well. Yeah.
And no animals were harmed during the making.
No animals were harmed. No.
And how would you say you continue to develop your skills and keep current?
It's difficult to find the time, but I mean, I would say that a lot of the tool set that I use within Photoshop are tools that were originally released with Photoshop. I mean, I would say I could probably take a 20-year-old version of Photoshop and still do a storyboard on it quite easily. I think
Sure.
I think the software companies are a little bit guilty of streamlining processes, so most 90% of users can create what they want in Photoshop. It kind of takes the skill level out to a certain aspect, to a certain respect. So yeah, I try to keep up with 3D stuff, because that can really save you a lot of time.
Yeah,
if you just know, there's often multiple routes to getting the same result, and if you know the software very well, then you're just going to save yourself time and make life a lot easier for yourself. So I tend to keep up more with the 3D tech rather than the Photoshop stuff, just because of the limited set of tools that I use in Photoshop. So yeah, it's just practicing every now and then, watching some tutorials on YouTube, you know, from others that have worked out different ways of doing the same thing. Yeah.
What would we do without that? Being able to access stuff online.
I know. I mean, it's great for like the young ones now. I mean, at one time you'd have to, if you weren't sitting in a studio with people that knew what they were doing, you know, you'd have to go and get a book from the library and teach yourself. Now it's all there. Yeah, and I watch our girls learning stuff off YouTube, and
it's incredible, isn't it?
Like sponges. Yeah.
So the burning question: what's your interest in NFTs, and what was the driving force behind the fabulous Daisy Donuts?
Well, I'm an NFT noob. I don't really know an awful lot about it. This is definitely the first venture in NFTs. I think the attraction of it was, I mean, all my career, I've sort of, I take creative direction from producers and project managers and designers and art directors, and I'm always just applying my skills under the direction of those guys, and they'll direct a job very sort of stringently. There's not an awful lot of creativity sometimes that you can put into stuff. So when we first discussed it, and you said, this is for you guys, go create, that was like a dream come true, because it's effectively like an open brief, and I don't think I've had an open brief since I was at college. So that's what really excited me about it. I thought it's a chance for me to do something of my own for myself, and because I think artists know their own skills, good at what they're not so good at. So I think it was just a really good opportunity to do some nice work, hopefully, and yeah, just take it from there. Yeah.
I mean, that's why principally we set up White Light NFT, just to give you guys autonomy over your own time and creativity, and you know, find you another vehicle for earning some money and getting out there. It's
absolutely like to have like a passive income as well running alongside would be amazing. So again, that's something that's very attractive, and hopefully it'll go down well. I've got lots of plans to do some more, so fingers crossed.
It's well, Ross's Donuts will be coming to White Light NFT launch platform very soon. So Ross, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved working with you over the years, and hopefully we'll continue to work for many, many more. But thank you very much for today.
Thank you very much.
It's been very informative, and hopefully everybody will appreciate your talents even more now.
So, well, thanks for your time and your questions and your interest. Yeah, it's been good. It's been nice chatting.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Ross.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye.